Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today we have had some major technical issues. I am trying for one final time, and I've got a few guys in the background testing it on YouTube to see if indeed this works. Let's try again, boys, says Barry O'Sullivan. Barry, it's just you and me, my friend. Is this coming through loud and clear? Let me know. Holy such and such, says River C. It's working. Paul, it sounds good. You know what it is? It's the minute you bring on a second screen, the system doesn't like it. I'm just waiting for the go ahead from Colin in the background to tell me that everything is working good. And then, as a thank you for everybody for staying with us, a few people might have dropped out. Never give up, Andy Lee. You said it, my friend. Right, so it's working. I'm not going to risk bringing anybody else into this stream. I'm just going to run it myself, selfishly. We're going to do a Q&A with you guys in the comment section. I'm going to talk for an hour or until you get bored of me. It might not take an hour. I'm getting a wee message from Colin Watt. Working so far. There we go. There is an issue with the platform. If there's a wee bit of an audio crackle or whatever else, I think we can put up with that. But that last one was like the Daleks underwater. So we're not going to be putting up with that kind of stuff. Right, so here we go. I'm going to start off with yesterday. Made my point pretty clear, also on the mainstream as well as on Acsom in relation to where we are as a football club. The boys' statement that came up, and I'm going to go back to this, and I'm going to work my way through this boys' statement because everything was working okay up to a certain point before. We've got fan groups like Boys and Ultra Group. We've got fan platforms like Acsom, and we're talking about where we are. And what I would like to underline is something that came up in the boys section. Hopefully, bringing up a picture doesn't mess up the sound. There's another point. The boys were saying that this is not anything to do with one particular result. This is a series of different things that the fans are continually going back to in relation to failures at the football club. Now, what we do have is we've got a manager who seems to be speaking our language as well when it comes down to this. Here we go. What is the chance of getting a decent, robust forum for the fans to communicate with the board? Right, I'm going to start off with this one, Andy, because I was asked yesterday about the sack the board chants. And my instant reaction was I sang them back in the 90s. The reason I said that wasn't to say, you know, this is how long I've supported Celtic, etc., etc. It's nothing to do with that. I'm not interested in elitism when it comes to being a Celtic fan. We've got fans all over the world and everybody supports the club in a different way. And no matter how big a Celtic fan you are, you always meet somebody who is more dedicated than you. And that's happened continually throughout my life. But the reason I said it was that there was an end game to sacking the board. There was an end game to boycotts back in the 90s. And it's an end game and it's a control that's actually been taken away from Celtic supporters and probably football supporters at large, Andy, because football has changed to a point where it's virtually unrecognisable these days to what it was back in the day, back in the early 90s. And the people in charge, the people who are overseeing the so-called development, but certainly the running of the club, seem to be in a situation where it would be difficult to have that kind of effect. And what I keep asking on this particular show is what kind of change should we be looking at as a fan base? The first thing I would say is it's very difficult for fans to come together. This is, I always go back to this in the early 90s, how well, you know, the likes of the Save Our Celts movement, Celts for Change, the fanzines, they were all able to come together with a common goal to create change and push for change. And obviously at that point as well, you also had these businessmen waiting in the wings who were engaging with the fan groups and the fanzines and the street movement, if you like. And they were able to put into place a movement. And the result of that is it created an opportunity for Fergus McCann to come in and take over the club. So the boycotts and the sack the board chants, absolutely. It's more of, you know, it's to show their discontent really at the Celtic board and the way that the club is being run rather than thinking that it's actually going to involve a board being sacked, because that doesn't happen. The way that the club has been built, the way that the club is controlled means that we won't be sacking Dermot Desmond. We won't be sacking Michael Nicholson. We won't be sacking Peter Lawwell or Chris Mackay. And obviously there are other members of the board, but these are the lead figures, if you like, in relation to a chairman, a CEO, the head of finance, and one individual who has more shares than anybody else in the club. But that one individual, Dermot Desmond, does not own the football club. And this is the thing, de facto owner, someone who controls the football club, he doesn't own the football club. And I think that is the first point that we need to get our heads wrapped around, because we've been told for the best part of 20 odd years that he does, and he absolutely does not. So in relation to what the fans can do, is there a forum? There is already a fans forum, but the fans forum that currently exists is operated and managed by the club. There is something on the website, buried on the website, which shows you as a fan as to how you can attend the fans forum. I attended one, and it was during the COVID. It was a dial-in, and it's very much a system whereby they control the narrative. I think that, you know, we might be urged to attend fans forums, etc. However, when the club is controlling the narrative of that forum, how far can you take it? So I think that there must be another way of us being able to communicate with the club and show that there's enough fans who are looking to get change. I'm also liaising with Colin. A tad crackly, yeah, that's just something we're going to have to put up with, but it's not like anything in relation to what we were putting up with before. Everybody seems to be fine with it, which is great. We do have a stream, which is the most important thing. So yes, the boys, I'm going to start off with the boys. They came up with their own statement, and I'm going to run through that first and foremost. So here we go, the boys. On Wednesday night, we joined thousands of Celtic fans throughout the stadium in chanting "Sack the Board." For us, the chant was not just about one poor result in a European qualifying campaign. Although the last 2 decades have seen many of those, I'm going to touch on some of that in just a moment. Often due to a lack of timely investment to strengthen our playing squad, something many of our managers have called out during their time here. While sacking the board may not be a realistic demand, such chants are one of the few methods of airing discontent available to us due to the way our club operate. For us, this is about the board's continuous incompetence and total disregard of the opinions of Celtic fans who spend thousands of pounds every season supporting the club and see little to no return on investment either in the playing squad, the stadium and the matchday experience, to name just a few grievances. Other grievances that we have spoken about and continue to speak about on Acsom is the youth academy. There is an issue with the youth academy. It doesn't work. Everybody's coming in saying the sound is fine. I'm delighted with that. Thank you very much to Steve-O from Celtic World Order. Go and subscribe to their channel on YouTube. Thanks to Chris and Colin for jumping in and sticking with us. We'll scrap the original 2 editions of this particular Acsom bulletin. I will run for an hour, and yeah, we've probably lost about 500 viewers on the live stream, but everybody else who picks up later on in the day will be able to come in and enjoy the chat. Right, here we go. Michael Cavan, you're on the X platform. Your comment is, we need a young board to bring Celtic into the future as European football is changing. Right. There are many things that are night and day, ends of the spectrum, when you compare the old board to the new one. Absolutely. The financial prowess, the astute nature in which this club is run on a financial level. But there are some similarities, and I think it's important to point out some of the similarities. One of the main ones is the disconnect between the boardroom and the fans. That existed with the old board, who were ousted, but also their inability to take the club into a new era of football. And I do think that we are entering a new era when you look at the changes in the Champions League. And the board members should have looked at how that could work for us last season, and how it did work for us last season, and how we managed to play 10 European Champions League games. And you think to yourself, you know, all this talk for decades. I mean, Brian Dempsey was talking about it at the Save Our Celts rally, which we covered on the YouTube channel just a few weeks ago. If you've not watched it, go and check it out. It was unseen archive footage of that meeting at Shettleston Hall, where Brian Dempsey gave an impassioned speech, and he spoke about the changes in modern football and how there will be some kind of a Super League. He was talking about a British league that had been spoken about for many, many years, and then some kind of a Super League. It's arrived. Let's just understand now, I think, as a football club, that European Super League has arrived. It's called the Champions League. It's virtually, attendance by invite. You've got 5 and 6 clubs from the same league because they want the elite leagues to have more clubs in there. They're making it more difficult for clubs like Celtic, and it will become more difficult with the coefficient moving forward. We will have seasons where there are going to be 2 and 3 qualifiers before we can get into the Champions League proper. That's our own fault. It's also the environment that we live in Scottish football. And it's also the fault of the people at the top of UEFA who want it to almost be like a box office WWF kind of style league where it's invite only, not the champions of each individual country. But that's where we are. The Champions League is that Super League that we have been speaking about for decades. And last season proved that we could be part of that. We could dine at that table if indeed we want to do so. It's about ambition. It's about having the vision to look at that game back in February against Bayern Munich. And yeah, famously, and we keep going on about it, a few seconds away from getting into extra time at the Allianz Stadium and saying, right, that's how close we got. How do you build it? Well, what have Celtic done since then? Right? Well, we knew at that point that we'd obviously been down in London trying to get Kieran Tierney in the door for that game. We tried to sign him in January. The backup was, of course, a footballer who was also down in London, and it was Jeffrey Schlupp. So we couldn't get the Kieran Tierney deal done. It would have been magnificent if we could. Who knows if it would have been enough to get us through the tie, but it would have made us a stronger proposition. So we bring in Jeffrey Schlupp instead. It's just a sticky plaster. It's a short-term move. Right, so that's what we've done in the January. So since the Bayern Munich game, what have we done? Well, we've sold the man who was a star man on the night, Nicholas Kuhn, one of our biggest assets, £17 million. He's away to Como. And we've also had the winger on the other side of that park, Jota, injured in May at Tannadice. And we've failed to replace him. And we've failed to replace Kuhn. We also had a situation at that point because of the numbers and the fact that Jota was injured, etc. We moved Maeda into the centre-forward position where he absolutely thrives. He has the period of his career. For 6 months, he's the best player in Scottish football when he wins all the awards, and he deserved every single one of them. So where are we now compared to where we were then? We don't have Jota, we don't have Kuhn, and we don't have that Maeda centre-forward because he's having to play left wing because we have no other left wingers. So where's the ambition? Where's the vision? So the boys are talking my language here. And I was looking through some of the other campaigns that this board, largely the same board, okay, Peter Lawwell was the CEO, he's now the chairman. Ian Bankier was the chairman, he's now been moved on. And Michael Nicholson is now the CEO. These people, this clique, this group who are in the Celtic boardroom, hasn't changed a great deal since then, since I'm going back to 2014, the Legia Warsaw saga in Maribor, where we're trying to get through the qualifiers. We failed to do it. So we can go right back to 2014, I think, with regards to this board and an inability to show the ambition that we require to progress as a European force. Last season, we proved that we can be. I was asked a question yesterday, maybe because it was asked by someone who focuses on the English Premiership and the Scottish League. To a lot of these people, not all, but to a lot of them, is tin pot, it's a farmers league, etc., etc. And the question was, aren't Celtic a Europa League club anyway? Should you not just accept that? My answer to that is no, because we showed last season that we're not. But it does take everybody to be aligned. I don't like corporate speak, joined up and all that kind of stuff. It takes everybody to be aligned. Now, the Celtic board have to be aligned with the football department at the football club, headed by Brendan Rodgers. And then the third element of that, the Holy Trinity, is us, the fans. Are we aligned at the moment, or are we completely fragmented? I think it's the latter, personally. I'm going to run through the boys' statement, and then we're going to get into a wee bit of Q&A with you guys, because you stuck with me through that. Joe, thank you very much for letting us know. Yeah, it's not a problem with our setup here. There's an issue with the platform that we use. I'm not going to keep repeating myself, but just in case you're wondering, the dulcet tones are back. Thank you very much, the Underwater Cabbage Salesman. All good. Barry O'Sullivan. If you've been commenting for ages and wondering why we never pull your comments up, today's the day that we do that. All right, Gary, you're in as well, and we've got Gary in Cheryl Simpson. Sounds like our new fullback, our new centre half, rather. Thanks, guys. Great podcast. Keep on, boys. Come on. Here we go. You have the spine of Acsom. Sound is spot on. Absolutely. Get your thoughts in on. Yeah, we will talk about Livingston. Absolutely. Five for life. Thank you, Anna Permo. On this occasion, it wasn't the fact that, yeah, we are in Fife. We've got 4 channels and we work on pagers. That's not the reason that we couldn't go out. Ask for a refund. Hey, listen, that's quite a good suggestion. That you do pay for your platform, and it's not cheap either. Right, John Watt, let's get chatting about the state of play. £20 million in profit from this window. Just let that sink in. 20 million profit just from this window. And we go into our qualifier against Kairat with 1 left back, the aforementioned Kieran Tierney. We go into that qualifier with Jamesy Forrest, as much as I love him, most decorated Celtic player in the history of the football club. 34-year-old shouldn't really be starting this game. We should have a first pick replacement for Nicholas Kuhn playing on the right wing. Agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments. And on the left wing, you're playing Maeda, who's a fantastic player who will run his guts out, but he proved last season that he's our best striker. By a distance, John, I think he's our best striker. Why is he playing left wing? Because we have no quality to play on the left wing. So then you look at the fact that we have sold 2 players for reasonable amounts. We've sold Nicholas Kuhn for 17 million, Gustav Lagerbielke for 3 million there or thereabouts. But we've also been bringing in the old sell-ons, haven't we? Jeremy Frimpong, there was a windfall there. We're expecting a windfall at some point from Matt O'Reilly. There was another £1 million chucked into the pot from the Ben Doak deal. So we're well in profit just within the ring fence of this transfer window. But we also have, if you look at the financial statement from, I think it was September, £70-odd million sitting in the bank as well, right? Absolutely no excuses in bringing players in before the qualifying round. John, I think you're right. I think you're right, because a lot of people will say you're being harsh. It's difficult to do business. Well, we're Celtic. We're trying to get into the Champions League. Do you make it difficult to do business? Because I see other clubs doing business. Bruges did business. They sold players. They brought in players. Thank you, everybody. We're right up at 1,000. There you go. That shows you the power of a Celtic State of Mind and the community, where I was able to throw out a few messages to some guys like Chris McElwain and Steve from the Celtic World Order. They jumped on to try and help. It didn't work. And then you came back for round 3. So thank you very much for that. We're over 1,000. Unbelievable turnout on a Friday afternoon. We're all feeling a bit aggrieved at the moment. We will get to the positive stuff. You know, drop it in the comments if you want us to talk about it. But the Celtic Board have failed, right? So when I hear about players who want to see if we're in the Champions League, absolutely, I think that's a thing. They want to wait and see. And JP's view on that yesterday was, if a player wants to wait and see, then they're not the player for Celtic. I think players use Celtic. Of course they do. I mean, Nicholas Kuhn just did it. But we obviously got our payback from him, and I don't mean financially. We got our payback from his performances, from his important goals. So it's a two-way street. And if a player comes to Celtic and only wants to use us as a stepping stone and doesn't want to have that, relationship with the fans, then that's fine now. We're in modern football. We'll always have enough, mainly through the ranks or domestic players that have grown up as Celtic fans, who will have that link. There will be other players, the likes of Joe Hart, who had no connection to Celtic, who fall in love with the football club. It will happen both ways, and we'll build relationships either way. But you'll also get the guys, you might want to call them mavericks, who use Celtic as a stepping stone and move elsewhere. That's fine if the club continues to progress. I don't have an issue with that, as long as everybody knows where to stand with it. I'm going to be going back onto the boys' statement there, because it isn't one result. That's not why we're getting to the point where we are demanding change. And how do you get the change? And how can you bring a strategy together where there's a lot of platforms who may have a wide audience, and then you've got ultra groups who've got a huge influence. How do you bring all that together, the frustrations together, in a meaningful way where you can communicate and engage with a football club to the point where they don't just pull the shutters down? Because generally speaking, that's what happened. I got a tweet yesterday from someone saying, right, stop bringing all these random people on your Friday night show and start asking people from the club and start, posing questions to them. I get that as well. I think that comes through frustration. What I would do, thanks very much for Colin Watt, making sure that this started working in the background, Colin. Brilliant contributor to Acsom over a number of years, a good guy as well. So thank you very much for that, mate. With regards to that, I've got a few things to say on it. A Celtic State of Mind from day one was always going to cross over the football, music and culture spheres, because I think that's a massively important part of being a Celtic fan. I always think back to the Celtic supporters buses that I travelled through from Fife on, and the chat was politics, music, football, and loads of other things I wouldn't repeat on here. And I'm a wee guy, and I'm a sponge, and I'm listening to all these guys, and I'm going to give some of them shouts out. Back in the day, the Fife buses run by the likes of Jockey Munyon, who was my mum's relative, and also, people like Paddy Murphy and Jay Cusick and all these incredible people. And you sit there listening to their stories, and it's like scenes out of an Irvin Welsh book. But there you go, you learn, and you're a sponge. But my point is, and then the fanzine days of reading fanzines and reading about politics and the board and music and film and all this kind of stuff. I just felt that when Acsom started up, it was about a state of mind, and a Celtic state of mind can bring in other elements. So we will always bring in interesting guests. Tonight, it's John McLaughlin. John McLaughlin's doing an incredible run of shows at the moment, and it's called For the Love of Shane McGowan. I got a wee flyer from him yesterday. There it is. He obviously worked with Shane. He wrote with Shane and recorded with him. He's now doing a run of shows called For the Love of Shane McGowan, and there's going to be a Glasgow show in December. So we talked to John about that. Yeah, it's all about football, music, etc. But we also have other guests on who are of that ilk that was suggested yesterday. So I thought it would be interesting to speak to Tom Grant to get an inside take on the old board, the new board, and the original board that he actually joined. So he had kind of like 3 different boards, if you like, in his time at Celtic. And then obviously for a number of times over the 8 years that Acsom have been on the platform, I've spoken to David Lowe. I think David's always a very, very interesting guy to speak to when it comes to the world of Celtic. I appreciate Kevin Graham's in the waiting room. Do not come in, Kev. Do not come in. It all breaks down if you bring a second person in. But thank you very much, my friend. I'd put out a shout to Kevin as well. For some strange reason, the platform isn't liking anybody more than one person being on the screen. It turns into Dalek in the Kelty swimming baths, if anybody ever experienced that. So David Lowe's been a very, very interesting guest, and I hope to speak to him again. And the big thing with David is talking about other ways of looking at the control of Celtic and looking at the stadium and other ways how we can finance that. And we've had those discussions. But going back to the original point, when you try to get someone on from Celtic, that's an issue. So I'll go back to COVID, where obviously I think fans seen it much quicker than the board, that there was a major issue with regards to Celtic going for 10 in a row that season. And all around all the other issues, the global issues that we had to deal with, Celtic, I think, didn't deal with it that well. So it's not a case of just blaming the environment. Other teams were able to function better than what Celtic did. And changes had to be made, and they weren't made, and we didn't win the league. And it was a horrible season. But during that period, we made an official approach to the club, and we basically asked for an interview. We asked for answers. We thought at that point, because the because of the circumstances, everybody's at home, and that's where we got a hardcore of our listeners, and people have joined us since then. We went out to a great many of Celtic fans, and what we felt at the time, never ever would I speak for every Celtic fan, I wouldn't dare. But what I would do is I would say that there was a massive cross-section of people that got involved in our show who were as unhappy as we were with the running of the football club, and that was back then. We asked for an interview with Peter Lawwell. It never happened. People at the time were like, who do you think you are? What an ego to think that you've got a right to speak to Peter Lawwell when we don't. But it wasn't for me. It was for the greater good of everybody having an opportunity to actually pose those questions. So it wasn't a setup, if you like. You know, the interview that finally happened after Dubai, where it was Peter Lobel being asked questions by Peter Lobel in the guise of Jerry McCulloch, it wasn't going to be that interview. It was going to be a far more challenging interview to Peter Lobel at that time. And so, no, we would never get an interview. We have asked in the past. I was up at the club pitching a few things a few months ago, some of which I've shared on here. No chance. We're not going to get access. We have asked for access, and regardless of how big your audience is, and with regards to Acsom, Acsom's just hit £23 million on 23 million. I wish it was pounds. 23 million views, sorry, on the YouTube. Now, no other Celtic dedicated channel other than the club themselves have had as many views. So I know that there's a platform there, and that's just YouTube. You then have millions and millions of views on all the other platforms and on the audio. So we do go out to a lot of Celtic fans, and I think it would make sense for Celtic to speak to supporters and not in a setup where they're controlling the narrative. It would be far better if the Celtic fans were able to pose the questions that we need to ask. But it's not going to happen. We have asked, we'll continue to ask, but I'm guaranteeing it's not going to happen. The communication improved massively when Don Mackay came in. You have your own opinions about this. Don Mackay spoke to fans. He spoke to fans. He got fan media involved in press events at the football club. It is the reason why we are still there in terms of press conferences. But again, the press conferences are set up in such a way that you could be speaking to James Forrest before the you could be speaking to James Forrest before a game, for example. And you're not going to ask James Forrest a question about the way that the club is run or operated, because it's no fair on him, and he probably doesn't have the answer. So it's difficult as well, and it's set up in such a way that it's all about control. So that's where we are, and that's the difficulty. But I'm not saying we don't have a voice. What I'm saying is I think we need to have a strategy in order for our voice to be heard. So the boys were talking about sack the board. So that at the game, Champions League, broadcast around the world, the Celtic fans are singing sack the board. That's a message, and it's amplified. That also backs up my reasoning behind going on mainstream media. Not all the time I've gone on, as often as I've said no. And when you're on Sky Sports, you're amplifying the message, or BBC or STV or RTE, you're amplifying a message. I'm not going on there because it's an egotistical thing. I'm going on there because we do have a message, and when that message is good or bad, I think it's important to amplify it, and that's what we try to do. That will never be everybody's cup of tea. I absolutely get that as well. Mo Shislak, all joking aside, when we were critical of the board last time round, we get a lot of flack from people who think that we're entitled and spoiled and we shouldn't talk about it, and look at all the trophies that were won since Dermot Desmond's been involved. But there was quite a serious issue where there was an incident, you'll remember, where there was a firebomb, or a petrol bomb, sorry, at one of the properties at Peter Lowell's. Absolutely ridiculous that happened. Shocking, and it's great that no one obviously was harmed. But the fright that they must have got and the experience would have been horrendous. But people were blaming us. They were calling us out, Mo. I think that's what you're referring to. They were calling us out and saying that we had fired up, the tension to such a degree that people were petrol bombing Peter Lawwell's house. That's not true. That's not true. And it's come out in the fullness of time that particular incident was not football related. So, that was the reason I'm bringing it up. I know you're not having a dig, Mo, but that is something that was levied at us previously. And it was unfair at the time. Doorstep him with a camera and the Green Brigade capo's protection. Well, this is the thing, that you wouldn't need protection. I've got absolutely no doubt that these guys support Celtic. Michael Nicholson spoke about that when he took over, didn't he, as the CEO, about where he sat, and he's been a season ticket holder. And that's another thing that people levy towards you. Oh, you're not even a real fan. I don't even know what that is then. I was born a Celtic fan. I went to my first game in 1987. That's your point of reference. That's your age. There's loads of people who went, younger than I did, but that was the age that I went to my first game. became a season ticket holder when Fergus came in 1994, still a season ticket holder. My season ticket's in the main stand. During COVID, we decided on Acsom, which had been running for a few years, that we were going to cover every single game. And at this moment in time, we are working on a way to cover the game and then leave the studio and go up to the game. At this moment in time, we run it from a location that's too far away from the stadium. But I'm not going to stop doing the streaming on match day, because we've built a community over the last 5 years. 8 years we've been running, but over the last 5 years, that a lot of them count on the pre-match and the halftime and the post-match, particularly games where Celtic TV put them out live across the world, and there's no pre-match or halftime discussion. I think that's something the club should get right. And whilst they don't have it, people tune into Acsom, and we get messages from all over the globe. So yeah, I do. I still have my ticket. I'll never give that up. I'll always have a Celtic season ticket, no matter what. But we're going to be doing it in such a way very, very soon, actually. I was in Glasgow yesterday at the very space that we're going to be using, where we're going to broadcast live, go to the game, come back, do it that way. So yeah, these are the things. If we were to doorstep any of them, I don't think we would get the answers that we want either. I remember Dermot Desmond getting spoken to on his way to Celtic Park. Didn't like getting spoken to, I don't think. I also remember, and I've referred to this a number of times, and this goes back to the culture within the club, where he was asked the question. He was asked for an interview, rather, from someone who doorstepped him, but in a different way. Celt 88, he phoned him up, cold called him, managed to get him. And Dermot Desmond said, "How many trophies have Celtic won since I became the largest shareholder?" The journalist couldn't answer it. The interview didn't happen. But and I said this yesterday, and it's slightly tongue-in-cheek, but I mean, come on, Dermot, you never scored any goals. What winners did you score during that time? Don't try for a minute to take the credit for Celtic's success. You are a cog in a massive operation. Don't forget the importance of the fans. Don't forget the importance of the people that are playing and managing the football side of the department, and all the great people in and around those departments who got no credit whatsoever. The light's never shone on them. And you're telling us that how many trophies since you came in. I just felt at that time there was an air of arrogance in that response. Regardless of who was phoning them, there was an air of arrogance there. It's not because of Dermot Desmond or anybody in the board specifically that we have been so successful. They have done their job well in relation to running a business, but it's not a normal business. It's a football club. People say this to me all the time. You know, how many times does the CEO of Tesco speak to its customers? We're not customers, we're fans. There's a huge distinction. There's a massive difference between that. And you should be getting communication from your CEO. Darragh McAnthony, who obviously been involved in and owned Peterborough for a long, long time. He was on the show yesterday, not Acsom, although he has been invited on. And he was talking about that as well, the fact that, you know, you've got to engage, particularly in this day and age. We can't go back to the 80s and the 90s where everybody just done what they were told. You couldn't communicate with the club. Absolutely no excuses now. So the club have to respond to that. Now, there's lots of things to talk about. We are going to be obviously touching on the issues with the board, but there is word that Balikwisha might finally sign for Celtic. The Jacob Brewin deal might also be back on, depending on the source. Some say yes, some say no. But they're talking about those two players coming in for around about 10 or 11 million quid. Wouldn't it have been fantastic to have two different options on the wing, two different attacking options the other night? This is where the frustration lies. We've obviously done all the legwork, all the scouting, all the recruitment data. It's already been done on these two guys. Brendan Rodgers wants them to be signed. Why have they not been signed before the game? You're hedging your bets, but then you're becoming the architect of your own demise by not bringing them in. Adam Idah, there needs to be a discussion about Adam Idah and what has happened to that player's form and where he fits in this Celtic team, and where do we go from here? I want all your comments in the comments section. Thanks everybody for sticking with us today. There was a few false starts, but we got there. Third time lucky, and we're now 1,300 strong and alive. I'm doing it myself today, but with the assistance of Colin Watt, Chris McElwain, and also Steve from Celtic World Order. If you do anything else today while you're on YouTube, go and subscribe to his channel, Celtic World Order. Right, Alistair Johnson was injured the other night. And in the pre-match press conference today, I'm expecting to find out, because it will be a question that Brendan's asked, how long is he going to be out for? Johan Mjällby said, look, if it's a hamstring, you're talking 3 months. That's devastating. That is devastating for Celtic. Alistair Johnston and Kieran Tierney have been our two best players throughout the piece. They have been the two best attacking players in many, many ways down the wings. I mean, when you look at the amount of crosses that Kieran Tierney has made, there was a frustration for me the other night watching that because the quality of cross was there. There was nobody in there attacking the ball. That really frustrated the life at me. But Alistair Johnston's been doing it. And he's also spoke about learning from Kieran Tierney and then ping. That happens in a game where he's basically just opened his body up to do a sprint, and you can see him the minute you see a footballer holding that part of the back of their leg, you know what it is. He gets stretchered off. He's gutted. I'm gutted. But I'm going to pitch this one to you, and I mentioned it briefly yesterday when JP was on. Max Johnston, the former Motherwell player, Scotland cap, 21 years of age. Derby have had a few bids knocked back. You can pick him up for around about the £2 million mark. He's currently with Sturm Graz. I think he would be a shrewd move for Celtic. And when Alistair Johnston comes back, you've got the two Johnsons plus Tony Ralston. You should have three players in every position, shouldn't you? Even if maybe in some of the positions, your third guy is somebody coming through the ranks. So what that then leaves us with now with Alistair Johnston being injured is the need to bring in a right back. And you ask yourself the question, right, is it a right back that you will consider as a backup for Alistair Johnston when he comes back? Or do you buy that number one target when it comes to right backs that have been identified through your recruitment team? That question has to be asked with regards to the budget that the manager has. We still need a left back. There's no way anybody's going to convince me, and I'm a massive fan of Liam Scales, that we should be running with Liam Scales as our backup left back. Bad idea. We then move into the attacking areas. I don't think we need anything in the midfield. I'm not saying that we're playing the correct midfield. I don't think we need any more bodies in there, though. We do need a centre forward, don't we? We need a right wing. We need a left wing. And if we bring in a good enough left winger, then I do think there's a discussion to be had around the necessity of a centre forward when Maida becomes an option up there. I think the energy that we had was completely different for that half hour or so that he played through the middle. Dyson Maida, there has to be a conversation around Dyson Maida. His form has not been great. I think the caveat is he's now is he playing out of position? Has he always played out of position on the left wing? I remember Liam Carrigan telling us from day one, this guy's a centre forward. And I think we've seen it last season that he actually is a centre forward. Yes, there have been moments where you think to yourself, right, there's I don't know if it's an instinct. There was a moment in the cup final against Aberdeen, 1v1. There was a moment in the last Rangers game, same scenario. There was a moment the other night where he had a one-on-one with the goalie and he should have done better. It then leads into the discussion with regards to Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers, I think it's been very unfair on Brendan that he is basically the only spokesperson for the club. As I said before, you can put a player in front of the mic. You can't ask him any questions beyond the football. You just can't. It's no fair on the player. And as I said before, it's not really their lane. It's not what they've got a knowledge of. Brendan Rodgers has asked all those questions, isn't he? And that's not fair on him. I think he deals with it really, really well, although he started getting a bit frustrated by it. And I think the club have to be a bit fairer on the manager in that respect. I felt the same during COVID. I think Neil Lennon was left high and dry by the board for long, long periods of time. And then we got that kind of created, contrived interview with Peter Lawwell eventually. But by that time, the damage had been done. So we've done this before with managers where we basically just put them front and centre. You deal with all the flack. But because of that, and because he's operating with one hand tied behind his back when it comes to the recruitment side of it, and he was promised that it had changed, even if we were to offer him a 3-year deal right now, do you think he would take it? Let me know in the comments section. I heard rumblings that following the success of last season, if we sufficiently showed an intent to progress and improve in Europe, Brendan Rodgers would have signed a 3-year deal. This is what I'm being told. Livingston, we've got Livingston this weekend. Let us know your thoughts on the starting 11 with one eye on Kairat next week. And then finally, the inability of Celtic to get business done. Right. Now, we've been talking about it on here, and there's plenty of football fans in all walks of life who want instant gratification. We want signings. we hear about somebody's birthday on the social media and we want signings. We always go, and I get it. I absolutely get that. But it's not just the fans who are talking about this. So we've had a situation with Marco Tilio, surplus to requirements. Very, very unfortunate for him. I was listening to Paul McStay yesterday talking about Marco Tilio and watching Marco Tilio as a 16-year-old and thinking that he had all the attributes to become a top-class player. He's come to Celtic and it's no work to it. That happens, right? Daniel Arzani, anybody, it happens. So you wish him all the best and you think, right, he's going to move on. Rapid Vienna, it's initially a loan with an obligation to buy. The transfer fee was agreed, but we can't sell him. We can't sell him at the moment because we've not done our business. So the Tilio deal's put on ice. Same thing happened with Yang. There was interest from a number of clubs, not just Norwich, and Yang. That's put on ice because we don't have the sufficient numbers in the building. What happens when you do that to football clubs? Well, I'll tell you what happens. Plymouth Argyle have told us today that they no longer want Stephen Welsh and they've moved on to other targets. Stephen Welsh was going to be loaned out to Plymouth Argyle. I don't know if the player wanted to move, but that was the chat. But because we have left it hanging, we've left Plymouth Argyle hanging, the deal isn't happening. So there's 3 players in limbo there. That's not good on the players. It's not good on the reputation of the club when dealing with other football clubs, both in England and abroad. You then have ex-players like Benji Siegrist coming in, telling you the situation when he was leaving the football club and the fact that it was more or less a done deal, but it hadn't quite been signed, sealed and delivered yet by the football club. I'm talking about Celtic here. 4 weeks passed and the club sat on it. The club sat in the deal. The agent didn't know what was happening. The player didn't know what was happening. The club who were taking Siegrist on didn't know what was happening. This is complacent. It's really incompetent. It's poor. And then, of course, you've got the Jacob Braham deal with regards to Go Ahead Eagles coming out, the director coming out and saying that Celtic aren't doing their business quickly enough or well enough. So it's not just the fans. We're talking ex-players. We're talking, obviously, clubs that we're trying to do business with and directors of other clubs who have already done or tried to negotiate with Celtic. And they're coming out and saying that Celtic aren't good enough to do business with. And that really is embarrassing because we are a football club that's trying to progress in Europe, yet we're not operating like that. The other day, Brendan Rodgers said that Celtic are one of the biggest football clubs in the world. As a football fan, as a Celtic fan, I like to think that's true, but I'm thinking about the fan base. I'm thinking about us and the way that wherever you go globally, you will find Celtic fans. The club, it's happened not by their design. That hasn't happened by their design. They haven't gone into all these different pockets and created a buzz around Celtic. Celtic fans have created that themselves. So the club can't take credit for that. I keep going back to, even the deals that we do as a football club. We do a deal with New Balance and then we put it out there in the promo material that it's the biggest deal that Celtic and Scottish football have ever done for a kit. We do a deal with Adidas and then we put out the press release saying the same. This is Celtic. We were going to get a great deal. I mean, it would be difficult not to get a great deal. We've got a global fan base. So even when it comes to that, yeah, give credit to the person that done the negotiating and all the rest of it. But we were going to get that deal anyway. It's the same with sponsorship. We were going to get the sponsorship deals. We need to be better in all these other aspects that we continually speak about. And I want to hear your thoughts. It's not all about me going on and on and on. David, you're in. David Stocker, you're on the YouTube. Show you Celtic Board don't interact with fans. No, they don't. They don't interact with fans. They might point to a fans forum that happens irregularly. How many people in the comment section have been at the fans forum? Let me know in the comment section how well it went and who set the narrative and how much of a voice you felt you had when you were there. Better looking at Kev behind me rather than that shirt. Thanks for bringing it up, Jack the Cat. Not my favourite shirt, I've got to say. In fact, I'm not a big fan. It has been christened by Quinny as the coleslaw jersey. And I can see why. And the frustrating thing there, just as a wee aside, is that the same template was used for Nottingham Forest. They obviously didn't have the sound waves on it. And they created this thing of beauty. There's golds in there. And beautiful, beautiful jersey. So it could have been a lot better than it was. The reason it's on that mannequin right there, I could be trying to promote our merchandise, but the reason that's on there is because we're currently running a competition. Kevin, not Kevin Graham, but Kevin, an Acsom listener, won the away jersey, which is on its way to him. Hopefully he gets it this weekend. We're now giving away this one. We're trying our best to give it away. Trust me, we're trying our best. All you need to do to enter this competition is to give us a thumbs up on the YouTube channel, subscribe to us on YouTube, and tell us the player that you feel embarrassed the hoops. The reason that we use that as a comment on the YouTube video is because I feel that that jersey is up there with some of the worst jerseys I've ever seen when it comes to having a Celtic badge on it. Scott Dougal. Don Mackay was too modern thinking for the board. I'll just give you my personal take on Don Mackay. Don Mackay was headhunted as a CEO. And I think that speaks volumes, because if you have been, it means that you've made a name for yourself in other similar sized businesses elsewhere. And then you've shown that you can run that operation elsewhere, and you are brought into this organization with the thinking, I've never been headhunted in my life, but this is what I think happens, with the thinking that you can continue to do that progression and that development at Celtic. So John Mackay came in, and I'm going to tell this story. I've told it before on here, so apologies if anybody thinks I'm repeating myself, because I have repeated myself 3 times today already with this stream. I got a phone call on my phone, and you know, it pings up. It's an unknown number, right? But the last 4 digits were either 1967 or 1888. And I'm thinking to myself, it was kind of summertime. It was definitely pre-season. It must be something to do with tickets. So I answer the phone, and it's Don Mackay, the CEO of Celtic, phoning Celtic fans for a number of different reasons, phoning Celtic fans and actually standing there and having a chat about, you know, his plans for Celtic, and the fact that he wanted to engage more with Celtic fans. And what he was doing that particular day is he was phoning around anyone who had set up a platform like such as Acsom, and he was saying, right, you guys haven't been in speaking to us or engaging with us because we've not run it like that previously, but I see the value of fan media. I'm going to bring you guys in. And from that day forth, Acsom and others have had a level of access. Not the kind of access we thought we were going to get, but obviously there's been a change of CEO. Fast forward, after Don Mackay leaves the club, and by which time I've got his number because he was that way inclined. And there was a couple of messages back and forward, and I wished him all the best. And then fast forward again, and we are invited down south. It was London. We were down there. Lawrence was there. Tony Haggerty was there. And it was the events. It was an award ceremony, rather. So we went down, and we won an award, and he wished us all the best and says it was richly deserved. So beyond that, I thought to myself, going back to one of the points I made earlier, wouldn't it be tremendous to bring him on the show and actually speak to him and understand non-disclosure agreements, etc. But I said that months and months later. I said, look, it would be great to find out what went wrong, right? Because I think everybody can concede that something went wrong, because what was he, 70 odd days in the job? And at that point, it wasn't right for Don Mackay. And maybe that was because of the job he was in. He didn't want to shine a light on something else. He was concentrating on what he was doing. He was busy. Or indeed, there might have been some kind of agreement. I don't know how long that runs for. So I've not completely written that interview off, Scott. I think it would be a very, very interesting interview going into that one. And I hope that at some point we do see that on a Celtic State of Mind as well. I'm going to bring up lots and lots of these coming in. AC/DC Rock, says John Watt. Anyone there last night? Well, JP was. JP was there. Thanks for all your comments coming through. If you want to win this jersey, subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up on this video, despite all the technical hitches that we had earlier. And also let me know the player that embarrassed the hoops. Tell us. It's a bit of fun. It's a bit of fun, right? You can have a bit of comedy from time to time. Not the View, a bit of humour. It's not the View comedy, isn't it? Love it. I'm bringing you in. Here we go. Had doubts about Lowell after his son got the boot from the recruitment team. Surprised he stayed. Well, I remember the last time that was discussed, actually. Love it. On the show, and we were put right on that one, that Mark Lowell wasn't booted. He walked. He left. Now, the reason I bring that up is because that is apparently what happened. Now, obviously, with the family connections with the club, etc., you think to yourself, if you've walked away from that position And as far as I know, he's not got a similar position elsewhere, which I think also tells its own story. Then if you found that it was so difficult to work under the environment and the parameters that were set for you, and obviously you are part of a family that's been involved with Celtic for a number of years, since 2003, then I'll tell you what, it must have been a very difficult environment to work in if Mark Lowell decided himself to walk from that position. So that might show you how dysfunctional the recruitment side of Celtic is. John Sweeney, is it true Nicholson gets 92 grand into his pension pot every season? If true, that's a disgrace. And what other perks are they getting? Well, actually, it's interesting that you bring that up. So when we look at who makes what at Celtic, the CEO currently gets £837,000 a year, John. So Michael Nicholson, his salary, I'll repeat it, is £837,000 a year. There you go. Let that one settle. The chairman, Peter Lawwell, currently gets £120,000. Now, interestingly enough, with regards to those two figures, the CEO got a pay rise up to 837, a pay rise of 120 grand. There you go. You could almost buy an Inamura with that. And the chairman, Peter Lawwell, 120 grand that he's on just now, that was a 300% pay rise. He now gets three times the wage he was previously on at Celtic. So I'll ask this question as well, a very, very quick bit of mathematics. 957 grand between them. Are they earning their crust? Let us know in the comments section, and I'm pretty sure I know what's coming next as well. Listen, thanks for sticking with us, Dan, and thanks for supporting the show. I really appreciate it. It allows us to do other things. I know that a lot of platforms, not just Celtic, but across the world of content creation, have started putting out their content behind a paywall. When I started doing this on a full-time basis, I set up a business plan which meant that the content was free. That's my plan. That's what I'm sticking to. I'm going to keep Acsom's content absolutely free. You can tune in. You don't pay a penny to watch a Celtic State of Mind. People do support the channel, of course, and it may well be an avenue and a gateway for you to say, oh, I like that bit of merch, or I want to come and see Acsom talking to Martin O'Neill or Manny or someone else, Bobby Gillespie maybe, even start a rumour with that one. And then obviously there might be an opportunity then for people to buy into the Acsom thing and the Acsom brand, absolutely. But the content is free. Tonight, This Is Acsom will go ahead as normal at 6 o'clock. It's wee John McLaughlin. I don't think he'll mind me calling him wee. He talks about the clash. He talks about Rod Stewart. I asked him the question how he feels about a lot of Celtic fans who don't like Rod, because obviously they're big pals. And also Shane McGowan, the one and only Shane McGowan, for the love of Shane McGowan. So thanks everybody for getting involved. I'm going to keep this going at the moment. We're 52 minutes in. Just keeping a wee eye on the time. We'll run over a wee bit. Doogie Sharp, our custodians should be ashamed for their money hoarding antics. Our forefathers would be raging, as are we. Doogie, I think that there's a great thing within your words there. There's a great sentiment. And the sentiment is this. We pride ourselves on the fairy tale element of our football club, which is true in that we were formed to feed the underprivileged. We were raising money for the dinner tables. Everybody knows the story. It's an incredible story. It's not just a business that was set up to make money. And yes, I get that was in 1887 when that first meeting happened. I get it. And times have changed. But I don't think that the optics are great when people who spend a vast amount of their income, of their disposable income, on this football club, realise that they're sitting with 100 million quid in the bank. And then you're asked to pay over and above your season ticket to go to the qualifier. And you look on that park and you ask yourself, with £100 million sitting in the bank, how much investment has there been in that starting 11 this season, in this transfer window? Well, the answer is £1.7 million, Doogie, on Benny Gren. As good as he is, and I'm excited to see more of him. I think he's been an excellent signing so far. I think he'll come really, really good for us. He's got a lot of composure. a lot of drive. I know some fans were annoyed at him telling us to up our game and all that kind of stuff, but he'll learn. £1.7 million was the investment on that park this transfer window, trying to get through into the Champions League proper, Dougie. Is that good enough when you've got £100 million sitting in the bank and the people sitting on those chairs, those seats at Celtic Park, have had to pay extra over and above the season ticket, money they can't afford, but they would do anyway because this thing called Celtic, it captures you from a young age, and you want to see your club strive. But there's a group of people refusing to show the same ambition and refusing to invest adequately in a squad that actually, after the Bayern Munich game, needed some tweaks. We need more than tweaks now, don't we? AR, you're in. This board needs rooked out. Their arrogance is going the same way as the old board. There are similarities where the power goes to their head. Absolutely. In relation to the Celts for Change footage that we released, it's been very popular on the Acsom channel on YouTube. Go and check it out. It was part 2 of a 4-part series. The next part, I'm not sure if it'll be next week, but very soon the next part will come out. And it was the second Save Our Celts meeting, also filmed. Terry Cassidy was at that one. And I think Matt McGlone asks questions from the crowd. Obviously, Celts for Change, they were the next movement. They came after Save Our Celts, and obviously the work that they guys did was incredible. I would love to uncover some footage of some of their rallies in Glasgow, but I do have one of the rallies in Ireland, and I've been promising to show that on the channel, and I will, and that's going to form part 4 of the season as well. Get Peter Lawwell on the Joe Rogan show with a big cigar, Mo. I can just see that. Turn up on his doorstep. I'm not going to do that, Kaiser. Come on, I know you're tongue in cheek there, but we could turn up at Celtic Park and speak to them there. Hopefully that will happen. Yeah, there we go. Andy Lee at Celtic World Order, world class basics, mate. Yeah, world class basics. And we've also got, let me have a look here. We've got on a Permo. We've got, we will be signing players other clubs don't want. If we don't get to the Champions League proper, then we will not be signing the players that were number 1 on the list, put it that way. Right. I've heard the Champions League qualifier being described as a potential banana skin. What I would say to that is that every single qualifier that any football team has in the Champions League is a potential banana skin. You can't just look at Kairat, say they're from Kazakhstan, a football backwater. It's fine. Get through that one, Brendan, with the players you've got, and then we'll give you some money and we'll open up the budget and we'll give you the PIN number to the bank account. That's a nonsense. Every single game is a potential banana skin in that stage of the Champions League tournament. The least that fans should expect is that we're well prepared. That's it, the least of it. I'm going to run through some of these previous campaigns under pretty much the same board. There's not been much wholesale change throughout this period. 2014, you'll remember playing games at Murrayfield. Strange atmosphere, but we played Legia Warsaw and they battered us and they knocked us out. But then they had done something a bit daft with administration and we got a 3-0 win. And we went through, bizarrely enough, on away goals because they had beaten us 4-1 over there. You'll remember, and there was a big, massive campaign at that time to get Legia Warsaw through on sporting merit and everything else. But, you know, we took it. We went through. They should have got the paperwork right. And we faced a team called Maribor. Now, this was, you'll remember, Ronnie Dyler's first season in charge. I think Ronnie Dyler is the type of manager the board love because he just comes in and does his job and doesn't push the envelope or pressurise them or come out and call them out in the media. He's the type of manager, along with the likes of, I would say, Tony Mowbray and to a degree, Neil Lennon, who wouldn't talk against his employer. But at the same time, then you get what you're given. And what we went into these Maribor games with, get this. This was on the back, incidentally, of us selling Fraser Forster for 10 million quid. And if you look at the other sales in that leading up to these games, we had brought in 11.5 million pounds on player sales, right? This is 2014. How much did we spend before the Maribor game? I'll tell you how much. 0. We brought in a free transfer, albeit it was Craig Gordon, and it was a very good free transfer, and 3 loanees. Where's the ambition? I'll go back to the point I made earlier. The least that fans should expect is that we are well prepared. This is 2014. This is 11 years ago. And we go into the game against Maribor, having been given, the golden ticket, the Willy Wonka ticket. We tripped up and we found the Willy Wonka ticket and we got access into the next round because Legia Warsaw didn't fill out the substitutes paperwork properly or played a sub. It's happened a few times with us with various clubs. So there you go, 2014. And Maribor bounced us out 1 each and a 1-0 defeat. Embarrassing. But we failed to prepare. You move on to 2015, Ronnie's still in charge. We come up against Malmo, you'll remember, in a qualifier for the Champions League. And the Champions League riches being the biggest, most lucrative income stream that a Scottish football club could ever tap into. And what do? We spend £3.275 million on Dedrick Boyata, who turned out to be a decent player. Sadie Yanko, remember him? He was a free. Chifche, Nadir Chifche, £1.5 million. And Scott Allen, 275 grand. Decent domestic player. But that was the 4 guys we brought in to get past Malmo in 2015. And it was a £3.275 million spend. And guess what? They beat us 2-0 and we beat them 3-2 and we bounced out of the tournament. No ambition. The least that fans should expect is that we are well prepared. Were we prepared 10 years ago? No, we weren't. You jump forward a wee bit to Brendan Rodgers in 2018. We came up against AEK Athens, and I've looked at this one because I think this is the one where there were some difficulties with this one, actually. But what I would say is that we made a huge profit. We made a huge profit. We did sign Odsonne Edouard for £9 million, but we made a huge profit by showing a lack of ambition, particularly when we bounced out the tournament. And we sold Dembele for 20, Armstrong for 7, Sviatchenko for 1. But the £9 million outlay for Edouard was covered by Armstrong and Sviatchenko, there or thereabouts. So we can talk about, we showed ambition by signing Edouard for £9 million. But, it was ring-fenced money from the transfer window. Then we get bounced out and make £20 million for Dembele, but we're not in the Champions League proper. Would we have made more than £20 million if we were? Probably we would have done. So we get bounced out of the Champions League, £19 million in profit. I know there were other issues around the Athens game. There was obviously the issue with Dedrick Boyata. There had been a £9 million bid from Fulham. Brendan Rodgers wanted to keep him and get through into the Champions League, which absolutely I would agree with. The player more or less down tools. I don't think it's any revelation to say that. So there was a lot around that Athens game, which wasn't quite as bad as some of the others, but there was a sense of frustration around it. But bounce forward a year, Rodgers is gone. He's had enough after that debacle. He's had enough and he's away. And Neil Lennon comes in and we face Cluj. There's a lot to be said about this game as well. So we draw 1 each with Cluj and they beat us 4-3 away. You'll remember we were going through. We were going through at that point and we conceded a goal on the 80th minute and then one in the 93rd minute. It was a disaster. But in that transfer window, we made £15 million profit because we sold Kieran Tierney for £25 million. But the £10 million that we spent, you'll remember, Julien and Bolingoli were sat on the bench for the Cluj game. We ended up playing Lewis Morgan up top and Callum McGregor at left back. I'll say it again, the least that fans should expect is that we are well prepared. Were we well prepared? Were the players, Julien and Bolingoli, brought in early enough? No, they weren't, because they weren't fit enough for that game. We lost the game. And the frustration here is you look at some of these teams, and this is something that JP said yesterday, if you were to meet them in October, November time, you would beat them. Well, we did. We met Cluj later on in that season, and we beat them pretty comfortably 2-0 at Celtic Park, you'll remember. Having bounced out of the Champions League and gone down into the Europa League. And yes, we did have some great memories of the Lazio game, etc. But we're talking Champions League progression here. The Ferencváros one in COVID, difficult actually to lump that in with the rest of them because we did sign a lot of players and there was a lot of things happening. And that was the infamous game afterwards where Neil Lennon said there are players in that dressing room who don't want to play for Celtic. And then you've got the Midtjylland one, the transition from obviously the COVID season to Ange Postecoglou. And Ange did call out the board for not getting business done quickly enough. And by the time we started getting the business done, we were out of Europe. So we're actually setting ourselves up for the 7th occasion of losing qualifiers. And I would argue that at least 5 of them, if we're going to be completely fair, at least 5 of them were on the board not getting the business done and not getting it done quickly enough. Now, I get that this is a collective responsibility, particularly when you look at the other night and the performance of Celtic the other night. The players are not blameless. Brendan Rodgers is not blameless. It's a collective responsibility. But I'm focusing on the fact that we're at a stage now where Brendan Rodgers, I don't think he'll walk, but he's so frustrated, isn't he? So frustrated at getting asked the same questions all the time because we haven't progressed in terms of the deals that we were getting done or we should have been getting done. I think the Celtic board have looked at it and said, you can get through that with what you have, even though we're running without Kyogo, we're running without Kuhn, we're running without Jota. Some might even argue that we haven't replaced Matt O'Reilly. If you lose that standard of player and don't replace them, then you're not going to get the results. And that's the issue that we have. It's not just the fans saying it. Ex-players are saying it. Club directors of ex-clubs, other clubs that we're negotiating with are saying it as well. Another point I would make in terms of the dysfunctional nature of the transfer business, the recruitment department, is that the other night there, I was looking at the start 11. It was Brendan Rodgers' 5th transfer window. It slammed shut incidentally in about 10 days, right? It was his 5th transfer window and only 4 signings were on the park that have arrived since Brendan Rodgers came back, only 4. Now, I think that's a really terrible and embarrassing indictment on the recruitment that we have brought in the region of 30 players since Brendan Rodgers came back in, only 4 of them. Yeah, I get it. Cool. You know, I get that Kuhn's left. He came in and he left. You know, some of the other ones are there because they weren't good enough. Only 4 players from the 30 or so started the other night. So that's really poor in terms of the recruitment as well. As I say, we're running with 1 recognised left back and we'll fail to replace Kyogo, Jota and Kuhn. 7 months ago, we were a Champions League team. Are we a Champions League team now? We were 1 up against Bayern Munich. Away with seconds to play. There's a lack of vision and ambition in the boardroom. I think the boardroom don't have the same ambition as Brendan Rodgers or many of the fans that listen to a Celtic State of Mind. There's a lack of ideas and quality on the pitch. I think that when you're watching that the other night and you're just looking at the performance, it wasn't good enough. We should have had enough to get through. It wasn't good enough. There's an issue at the moment around Adamida. It's something we're going to have to speak about. I'd love to see him getting a few goals, try to build up his confidence. He needs to learn. He needs to be a very low maintenance player and just do what he's told. Callum McGregor's doing it on the pitch. Brendan Rodgers is doing it on the side of the pitch. And I'm sure in the dressing room and on the training park as well. He doesn't seem to learn. There has to be ramifications if we don't get into the Champions League proper. We're sitting with £100 million in the bank. Who is held responsible for that? And how, as fans, do we communicate with the club and with the board? We need to, I think, have a strategy on that one as well. The board have gambled. And I think that, you know, if the gamble doesn't come off, then Brendan's wrong. It's not sack the manager. You know, the sentiment will be sack the board. It's all about how do we get to that point. Brendan Rodgers, finally from me, Brendan Rodgers said that Celtic is one of the biggest football clubs in the world. That was after the game against Kairat. It's time we started behaving like one of the biggest football clubs in the world. We have never won a game of football in Kazakhstan. We've been over there 3 times. This is going to be our 4th occasion. We will need to make history to turn this tie around, right? And I think that the sack the board chance that the boys have come out and made a statement about, the sentiment is shared by many, many fans. Let us know in the comment section your thoughts on everything we finally got round to discussing today after 2 false starts. Major apologies. I will look into what's been happening on StreamYard as a platform issue. As you saw, we tried every permutation on 5 different systems and none of them were working with the audio, so I apologise for that. I'm a bit of a stickler and a perfectionist when it comes to audio and visual. We're currently in the process of moving the entire operation into a Glasgow hub, a studio where we're going to be broadcasting live from Glasgow on a daily basis from 12:30 to 1:30. Nothing's going to change in terms of the content other than how it looks. We're going to be sitting in a nice wee studio as well. So you're going to be seeing us from the waist down. We are going to have to put trousers on when we're doing these things. I know that some guys are bouncing about in their Y fronts. I'm not giving away trade secrets, Chris McElwain. But we are going to be in the studio very, very soon. Big changes at Acsom. Nothing's going to change. It's still going to be free. It's still going to go out every single day. And we're still going to cover all the games. Thanks for sticking with us. One final thing. We have been trying our very best to raise awareness for a wee fella called Jamie Tierney. Now, if you're new to the channel, and there are new subscribers, over the last 2 months now, we've had 1,000 new subscribers, which is incredible. There's people out there who don't know who Acsom is or what we are. So I'm going to bring this up. So look at this. Here is an old Celtic team group. Look at that, 1930 to 31. And you might remember, or you might not remember, I'd be amazed if you can remember, but you might recognise some of the names in here. There will be statos out there who probably are aware of all the names, but you've got Jimmy McStay in the back row there, obviously the great uncle of Paul and Willie and Raymond McStay, who was a former manager at Celtic. We've also got Johnny Thompson, our man from Cardenden, who sadly passed away on the field of play. We've also got who's the other one? Oh, it's Jimmy McGrory, the greatest goal scorer in British football history. But on the front row, on the right-hand side, there is Con Tierney. Now, Con Tierney is related to wee Jamie Tierney. So there's a Celtic link there, a very, very good Celtic link, going back almost 100 years, incredibly. But wee Jamie's a big Celtic fan, as is his dad and his granddad as well. And we've been trying to raise money in the, the traditional sense of doing fundraisers like live events, etc. And we try our very best. But once a year, there's a massive big ball. It happens in Fife, and it sells it every year. And I've had the great pleasure of hosting last year's event. I'm going to be hosting this year's event as well. And we're trying to gather up as much items as we possibly can for the auction and the raffle. So you might be part of a business. You might have a business out there, or you might work for a business who's able to give us a voucher or a service or an item that you could bring in, and we will collect it. You could come and visit us at Barras Art and Design one week, and we'll give it all to Jamie Tierney. What I would say, that's senior Jamie Tierney, his father. What I would say is that many of the items last year came from Acsom contributors. We were getting jerseys, we were getting them signed, we were getting signed jerseys in, fully signed, and basically we were able to frame loads and loads of items. There was an incredible donation from a Celtic fan who listens to Acsom, who gave us huge amounts of frames signed by Robbie Keane and Victor Wanyama. Unbelievable generosity came in. And it doesn't all have to be Celtic stuff. You might have won something at a speaker's event or one of these after dinner events, etc. It doesn't have to be Celtic related, just something that you think we could raffle off or auction for wee Jamie on the night. And what I want you to do, you can message me on pauljohndykes@gmail.com. You can DM me on any of the platforms out there. We're on all of them. If you comment on the YouTube, it might slip through the net, so please come directly to me, and I'll make arrangements to pick up or get them dropped off, and we'll give them all to Jamie's family. And we'll be reminding you maybe once a week of this. So if there's anything at all you can do for us, it would be hugely appreciated. I know that it's not been fun and games today. There's been a lot of kind of serious stuff. We've been talking a lot about the board. Some people see that as negative, and I understand that. But what I want you to appreciate is we're not trying to be negative here. We're just kind of sharing the frustrations, I think, of a lot of Celtic fans, but also preparing ourselves for the eventualities of next week. And what if it doesn't go our way and we can't actually overcome Kairat in Kazakhstan? What happens next? I think there's a lot to be said from that as well. Big shout out to Colin, Kevin, Chris, and also Steve-O for helping me out earlier on today. We had to scrap a couple of the streams. It meant that we're finishing an hour later than we normally would, but thanks for keeping with us, 1600 strong. Join us again tomorrow, 30 minutes before the game, on a Celtic State of Mind.